Hello, everyone. Graham Jeffs here. I'm honoured and privileged to be the chair of this second grand jury of the people of Australia and of the planet.
I'd like just to say this song was to invite all of our ancestors that have walked before us to step up, let them walk on the grounds that we walk on now. These are the ones that we call angel lion or spirit guides. They are those who walk before us on this land. It is their sweat, hard work and sweat that got us here, and we must remember that it was a work of them that put us where we are right now. Many of us have been hurt in the past. This is about getting over the hurt and walking forward together. Blessings to all.
Thank you.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
Okay, now it is my pleasure to open proceedings. Okay, as jurors of this grand jury, do we all agree to adjudicate and give our honest impression and vote accordingly? What say you all?
Aye.
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 Aye. Aye. Aye.
Thank you.
Aye.
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 Okay.
Aye.
Thank you. We'll now hand over to Leith Masters, who will read the orders.
Okay, can everybody hear me okay?
Aye. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you. The second Australian Grand Jury 2021, the 21st of October 2021. This is further to orders written and established in the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021. Opening address by Leith Masters. Welcome to the second Australian Grand Jury 21/10/2021, 12 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time, Uluru Time, chosen as we do pay respect to Australia's original nation people, their customary law and their great wisdom for the care of our beloved Australia. We offer immense respect to the higher powers and forces that do provide for us and breathe the life force energy through this body temple. We invite you to be present to witness the ongoing developments of the changing of the jurisdiction in Australia, leaving behind the private legal system of the Board of the Guardians, derived from the private trust of Unum Sanctum 1302, and welcoming in Crown jurisdiction, also referred to as rule of law. All are equal before the law. That being the primary measuring tool today and from this point forward, all are equal before the law. And thus to partake in the knowingness as we now move deeper into the logistics and mechanics of dismantling a privately owned and profiteering business model of Massman with an experimental mRNA cocktail in which your body is its customer, whether you like it or not. And let me just pause there for a moment. When I come up against that word, the VACCINA, I'm going to spell it just because as this travels on media, it will potentially get shut down. So just excuse me when I do that, please. We offer immense empathy and compassion for the extreme hardships that have resulted from this business model of an alleged pandemic. We recognise the agony of loss of loved ones, job loss, business collapse, suicide, domestic violence, family breakdown, and mental and emotional trauma, all derived from the measures implemented by public servants in support of a version of health and safety in the face of this alleged pandemic. Together, we the people install rule of law, all are equal before the law, and draw an end to this legal but not lawful, privately owned subset of law that has delivered to Australia and the world this COVID-19 landscape that does include extreme violations of our God-given inherent rights upon the human population. Now, 20 months into this alleged pandemic, the private legal system has failed miserably to draw a halt to tyrannical conduct, nor to uphold standards of recognised inherent rights, despite these being recorded over and over again throughout the decades and indeed the centuries. Such a gross failure does require an across-the-board dismissal of a failed system. This did occur as at the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021. We would like to thank the Australian Government, our public servants, for delivering a system to us, we the people, that is so obvious in its failure of rule of law, all are equal before the law. That being constructing a two-tiered society based on the VAXed and the un-VAXed, and preventing access to all manner of community facilities to the un-VAXed sector of society who choose to not indulge in the privately owned products of the COVID landscape. A two-tiered society is an obvious system of slavery. Hence, there is no debate of such failure to adhere to rule of law, all are equal before the law. There is no debate that we live in tyranny, and there is no debate that we the people remove such a tyrannical system urgently and immediately. We are expanding consciousness, thus we have changed jurisdiction. We are shifting from legal to lawful. We are exiting a 2,000-year age of guardianship, the age of Pisces. We are entering the 2,000-year age of humanitarianism, the age of Aquarius, where humanity manages itself. There is no cavalry. We, the people, are the cavalry. Only we can navigate this course and retire a system that has had its time and does not, cannot, and will not serve us into the future. We welcome you to the second Australian Grand Jury 2021 under Crown jurisdiction, rule of law, all are equal before the law, where we will address the mechanics of some of the orders listed from the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021, plus additional orders that have come to light in the past 3 weeks. If you are not familiar with the writings of the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021, you may find these at the executiveorders.life site under the drop-down menu of forms and gazettes, and you will find this writing also posted there shortly. Matters and motions for today. 1. Welcome to the second Australian Grand Jury 21/10/2021, 12 p.m. Australian Central Standard Time. 2. If you are not familiar with the vast orders of the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021, please view them at the executiveorders.life site. The Grand Jury does convene under Crown jurisdiction, also known as rule of law, all are equal before the law. The Grand Jury does convene to deliver the word of the Creator, God Almighty, of and for the people. Let no other profess to have superior standing to the word of the Creator, God Almighty. There is no higher law on planet Earth than rule of law, all are equal before the law. May we, the people, be seen and heard via the process of this Grand Jury. 75% yes is a majority rule in favour of the motion. This Grand Jury absolutely does recognise public servants as public servants of the people, paid for by the public purse and employed in service to the people.
I would now ask all of the jury members to agree or yes or no and raise your hand in the affirmative.
Yes.
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 Yes, I affirm.
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
Yes.
The matter is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Point 10, any public servant behaving like a ruler has until Tuesday, 5 p.m, 26/10/2021 to correct their behaviour or be dismissed from their public servant position.
I now ask the jury to affirm or deny and raise your hand.
Affirm.
Yes.
Yes. Affirm. Yes.
Motion to affirm.
Yes.
I affirm.
Yes.
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 Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Point 11, failure to step away from your position when misconduct is evident will result in a public listing in which all assets are frozen and a case for slavery will be filed in this court to be trialled before 12 jurors.
I now ask the jury to affirm and raise your hand or deny.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion firm. Affirm.
Motion carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Point 12, the Australian people do recognise the following public servants to occupy primary positions, with most alleging to have superior authority over the well-being of the people, as evidenced by their actions, assuming a role of needing to make health-related decisions for the people, issuing fictional mandates of conduct and rules as if the people were children or complete idiots, perhaps under guardianship of a privately owned church trust, such as the Papal Bull Unum Sanctum 1302. Perhaps Australia is just one giant church managed by ministers. For those who have done their research, which is vast numbers of we the people, there is no mystery as to this architecture. Point our current public servants paid on the public purse in primary decision-making roles, believing we the people need them to make up rules for our health management, include the following. I think I might just leave that on screen rather than read all of those names, if that's okay. Or the state premiers and the chief health officers from each state. Additionally, Prime Minister Scott Morrison, the individual who alleges we do not have mandatory vaccine in Australia. We also have Greg Hunt as the Minister for Health and Aged Care, Richard Colbeck, the Minister for Senior, Australian and Aged Care Services, David Gillespie, the Minister for Regional Health, Trade and Investment, and David Coleman, Mental Health and Suicide Prevention. These are the people responsible for delivering to you a sickness agenda of privately owned, foreign-owned, forced VAX, peddling fear-mongering, blowing up your family, friendships, businesses, capacity to work without being tethered to an AI VAX business model, suicides, domestic violence, extended and excessive incarceration in your own home, and preparing you for the coming age where AI runs the planet and you are its social credit slave. If you have done your research, you know this is the trajectory of what is unfolding. It is the same trajectory as it has always been. There are simply new tools available now with the development of technology to harvest the life force energy of humanity for the profit of the few. Point 14, in the matters of the privately owned VAX agenda, that does contain graphene oxide, magnets, computer technology, and is patented to Moderna and is evidenced via this 15-minute interview, which you can go and look at later, and additional vast quantities of extensive research, all available for your education at executiveorders.life. let us address this landscape via the press release issued by the Mark McGowan's West Australian agenda just yesterday, but with relevance to all states. 15. In law, it should be well known by our public servants that free will and informed consent are the primary pillars of a free society. Failure to deliver this option is an act of slavery and will be treated accordingly.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Affirm.
Yes.
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 Motion to affirm.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 16. Also in law, we therefore acknowledge that every transaction is an offer and an opportunity for acceptance or rejection.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Affirm.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 17. Anything other than that would be enforcement of a given ideology and would constitute slavery, particularly since humanity has already done a profound amount of work throughout the ages and sacrificed many ancestors in the pursuit of right ways and freedom.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Affirm.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18. Thus, as presented by Mr. Mark McGowan at 2010-2021 via his Facebook feed, the following quotes from our public servant and feedback from the people are relevant. 18.1 McGowan, based on the latest health advice, and in reply to that, we the people do not agree with the standard of health advice of the state nor federal chief health officers, deeming it to be vested interest in a private business model based in profit and control, as evidenced by point 14 above, and the vast quantities of associated research and data. Links are available at the Executive Orders site in Section 9 of the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 2021.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Yes. Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.2, McGowan says, we have just outlined a new overarching workforce VAX policy with a phased approach which will cover a majority of occupations and workforces within WA. And the people say there is no such thing as a privately owned, foreign-owned, overarching workforce VAX policy enforced upon the people and created by our public servants, nor the instalment of threats of up to $100,000 fines for business owners who fail to adhere to ensuring their teams are VAX'd. And with the promise of spot checks, this is a Gestapo-style system of governance. It is 100% slavery. It is gross incompetence by this public servant who is worthy of nothing more than dismissal for his acute failure to recognise, understand and implement rule of law. All are equal before the law.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Motion affirmed.
Motion carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.3, McGowan says, WA needs to be prepared for community transmissions. We the people say, for those of us who are educated beyond the mainstream media machine, for example, Channel 9, which does have the same chairperson, Peter Costello, as the Futures Fund, worth $226 billion, and which has $2.5 billion, and thus does constitute a gross conflict of interest. We, the people, view statements such as this based in the perpetuation of the sickness industry rather than the vibrant and healthy industry to be fabricated, profiteering mind control.
Now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion. Affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.4, McGowan says, to allow businesses to continue operating safely in this long term. We, the people, say this excessive oversight by our public servants into how business operates safely in the long term is a dialogue with a hidden agenda of perpetuating a consistent revenue stream for Big Pharma by alleging there is a deadly virus. To the educated, it is indeed a highly masterful scam played out upon the innocent, the frail, and the uneducated. It is an unwarranted invasion of privacy, of a chosen standard of living, and the inherent right to unencumbered trade. We do not need our public servants to allow us to trade. This is an inherent right.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion to affirm.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.5. McGowan
Yes.
says
Okay.
the policy strengthens current mandates. The people say, as our public servants would know, in law, there is no such thing as a mandate, as that would encroach upon the free will and informed consent of the people and would therefore be slavery.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Yeah, damn straight.
Motion
Yes.
affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.6. McGowan says mandating COVID-19 vaccinations for more than half of WA's workforce sets out a safe and clear framework for industries and workers based on expert health advice. The people say this policy does render the expert health advice to be gross incompetence, resulting in the slaughter of Australian society, with undoubtedly vested interest in the BioNTech share price of $13.82 US as at October 2019, now at $262 US, with a peak at $414 US at August 2021. Pandemics are lucrative games to play by those who have their hands on all resources, whilst the people have little.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Motion affirmed.
Motion carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.7. McGowan says this phased approach is safe and proportionate to the risk of COVID-19 in our community. The people say with 97% and 99% recovery rate and a vast library of supporting evidence of the low risk of COVID-19, any vaccination policy is entirely unwarranted and not a preferred choice. But thank you for the offer. We, the people, reject your offer to engage in the privately owned, foreign-owned, experimental VAX policy created by the public servants, and that does expect to set up camp in all of our lives. No, thank you.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.8. McGowan, under this phased approach, two groups of workforces will be subject to mandatory vaccination by certain dates, with a third group required to be vaccinated in the event of a lockdown. The people say our public servants paid via the public purse would know that in law, rule of law, All are equal before the law. There is no such thing as mandatory. Use of the word mandatory is fresh packaging for the word slavery. It is the removal of free will and informed consent of the people. It is the ownership of our precious bodies by the public servants, rendering them to be slave traders, trading our bodies for the profits of a private foreign enterprise. To enact this type of policy, your body must be alleged to be the property of the public servant, Mr. Mark McGowan. Thus, this is an act of slavery.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Yes, affirm.
Motion.
Yes.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.9, McGowan, Group 1, first dose by December 1, 2021 and fully vaccinated by 31st of December 2021. The people say, thank you for your offer, public servant, Mr. McGowan, but we, the people, do not accept your offer to indulge, to engage in injecting experimental foreign-owned mRNA cocktails into our bodies on a regular basis on the alleged theory that this is health. No, thank you. We have a God-given immune system for the vast array of health matters.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes, affirm.
Yes. Yes.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.10, McGowan, industries determined to have high risk transmission or are a vulnerability risk or are necessary or critical to the safety of community. The people say concepts such as this are an absurdity in law. They are a gross violation of the natural equilibrium provided by nature and a healthy immune system and will not be tolerated as a standard of dialogue by our public servants in our communities whilst wielding experimental foreign-owned cocktails. If one has done their research, one knows this is 100% fraud, fear-mongering, coercion and blackmail, installing a two-tier slave system whereby the business owners are now the Gestapo, patrolling the rest of community, insisting on VAX to keep their jobs to avoid horrendous fines. What a disaster. This is psychopathic and one must question the mental health of those who attempt to install this upon the freedoms of the Australian people.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Affirm.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.11, McGowan, a number of these industries have been announced previously and are currently in the process of implementation. And the people say all such industries are free to cease with this absurd agenda. A gross failure of competence and rule of law, all are equal before the law. An attempt to capture Australians within the realms of a private profiteering business model upheld by a private legal system, as per the orders of the IAGJ, the inaugural Australian Grand Jury of 23/9/2021. Community is reminded in law there is no such thing as corporate immunity. Corporate immunity is a construct of a private legal system that humanity has been entrapped in for 800 plus years. Thus, if you force an employee to get a VAX to keep their job, you are personally 100% liable and accountable for harm and injury. If you terminate the individual because you could not enforce them to get a VAX, you are also 100% personally liable and accountable for harm and injury. As perpetrator of such conduct, your assets can and will be frozen on a public gazette. You will be publicly gazetted as inflicting slavery in exchange for a paycheck. Make sure your chain of command is not asking you to do something that may cost you your own life, wealth, and freedoms. Be mindful, this is simply law, God's law, rule of law. All are equal before the law. It exists independently of what humble humans think they can create in Parliament. When we follow law, rule of law, all are equal before the law. As an Australian community, and indeed as a global community, we can exodus the mind games of this private profiteering mess that has invaded our planet.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, affirm. Yes.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Motion,
Affirm, sorry.
motion affirmed. Sorry. Go on. Do you want to have a break, please?
I'm all right. I'll get to the end of 18.
Okay.
18.12, McGowan, Group 2, first dose by 31st December 2021 and fully vaccinated by 31st January 2022. Industries and workforce deemed critical to ongoing delivery of business and the function of the community. Mandating requirement in place to ensure the continuity of key services and businesses in the event of expected community transmission. And community says all such industries are free to cease with this absurd agenda. A gross failure of competence and rule of law. This is an attempt to capture Australians within the realms of a private profiteering business model, as per the orders of the IAGJ. Community is reminded in law there is no such thing as corporate immunity. Corporate immunity is a construct of a private legal system that humanity has been trapped in for 800 plus years. Thus, if you force an employee to get a vaccination to keep their job, you are 100% personally liable and accountable for harm and injury. If you terminate that individual because you could not enforce them to get vaccinated, you are also 100% personally liable and accountable for harm and injury. As perpetrator of such conduct, your assets can and will be frozen on a public gazette. You will be publicly gazetted as inflicting slavery in exchange for a paycheck. So make sure your chain of command is not asking you to do something that may cost you your own life, wealth, and freedoms. Be mindful, this is simply law, God's law. It exists independently of what humble humans think they can create in Parliament. When we follow law, rule of law, all are equal before the law. As an Australian community and indeed as a global community, we can exodus the mind games of this private profiteering mess that has invaded our planet.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Confirm. Yes.
Motion affirmed.
Motion carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.13, McGowan. Lockdown, must be fully vaccinated to attend work during a lockdown or similar restrictions. And the people say there is no such thing as lockdowns anymore. Any further lockdown measures by the public servants upon the Australian people is strictly forbidden. Lockdowns are a nasty game with people's lives and resources. It is deemed an act of treason, fraud and slavery and will be processed via the Australia trials before a jury of 12 with outcomes ranging from damages to be paid, assets frozen and or sold, jail time and or death, as per the Nuremberg trials. Precedent was set a very long time ago for this type of misconduct by the public servants, and that precedent included the blood of our ancestors in their noble fight to secure freedom. It will not be lost to privately owned, patented products. A zero tolerance policy is now in force for this VAX game with our lives.
Now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion is passed in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.14, McGowan.
Yes.
These critical workers must be fully vaccinated to leave home to attend work to decrease transmission risk and prevent impact on the delivery of services. Groups 1 and 2 of industries represent approximately 60% of WA's workforce. With the addition of the lockdown group, approximately 75% of the WA workforce is covered by these categories. We the people say it is well recognised, researched with signed documents acquired that the public servants of the Australian government positioned the good, hard-working Australian people to be in debt to the privately owned Big Pharma VAX industry. Not only did the public servants sign contracts to commit the bodies of the people to the privately owned experimental VAXs without the free will and informed consent of the people to be the recipients of the privately owned experimental mRNA VAX cocktails, but the people are, of course, the financiers of the VAX, since a government as a legal fiction does not have any of its own money. It is merely an administrator of the people's resources. Additionally, if community does not want this privately owned product paid for by the people, they may have their job, which may be a critical field of expertise to community, terminated. We, the people, recognise it as 100% slavery, incurring harm and injury.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion affirmed.
Affirmed.
Yes.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Point 1815. McGowan, we will be undertaking close discussions with industries over the weeks ahead to ensure industries and workers understand the policy well ahead of the implementation phase. And we the people say, thank you, Mr. McGowan, for your offer to accept your public servant policy related to health management of the Australian people. For those of us who have done the extensive deep dive research, it is recognised with abundant evidence as a private, racketeering, profiteering business model preying on the weak, the vulnerable and the uneducated in community. Your policy is immediately null and void. We, the people, are paying close attention to industry and will not hesitate to gazette perpetrators of slavery and process them via an Australia trials. This is law. It exists independently of the whims of folks in Parliament. It exists independently to protect us, we the people, from treason, fraud and slavery.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Yes. Affirmed.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Point 1816, McGowan, unvaccinated workers in settings where exposure is likely to cause tremendous harm. They are a risk to themselves, their colleagues and the community. We simply cannot afford to allow the hesitant or complacent to infect those who have done the right thing and been vaccinated. Excuse that word. We the people say, thank you, Mr. McGowan, for putting in writing your willingness to show yourself to be either a completely uneducated idiot who is also a public servant or a complicit menace to society with an agenda to profit from the misery of others as you attempt, Gestapo style, to penetrate every element of society with your privately owned, foreign-owned, experimental VAX agenda. Either way, you have outdone yourself with this. You fail rule of law or are equal before the law. Therefore, you are grossly incompetent and as a public servant, you are hereby terminated by we the people from your role under the title of Premier of Western Australia. You are free to step away from your position immediately. Thank you for your service. You are no longer required by the good people of Western Australia, and may you be an example to the other public servants out there of what will not be tolerated. We, the people, are in charge and you work for us.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. 18.17. McGowan, WA's vaccination rate continues to climb, but people should not wait until the 11th hour. So don't wait for Delta to reach our state. VAXs are available today at GPs, pharmacies, and even without an appointment at any of our state-run clinics. For more information on this policy, visit the COVID-19 website. So that's his nice little sales pitch there. And we, the people, say to the educated individual, this statement is one of fear-mongering, a sales pitch to generate genocide outcomes as a remedy to a bankrupt system, pure fraud, corruption, manipulation, and profiteering. Thank you, Mr. McGowan. You are dismissed by the people for the people.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes.
Affirmed.
Yes.
Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you.
We'll take a short recess.
Do you want to? We're
Up
at
to you.
16 pages of 21.
to
We're
you.
in quite a flow. And
Let's go the home straight.
yeah, I think we're good. I think we're good. All right. Further matters. Calling upon the advancement of orders from the inaugural Australian Grand Jury 23/9/2021. Matter number 1, rogue peace officers in our community. That would be the rogue police officers. Advancing orders from the IAGJ orders 28, 30, 99, 110, 111, 112, 113, 114, 116, 117, 118, 121 and 122. By example, the Jane Doyle incident, Adelaide, South Australian Police, recorded by violated parties. Please read the contents of the injury listed, which I will do that. It's quite brief and I'll just, it's terrible. Awoke abruptly approximately 5 a.m. by 3 masked armed men that wouldn't identify themselves, threatened to bash in my door and arrest me, wanted to speak to my son, ignored all requests to leave, ignored trespass signs. Eventually, one name was given. All refused to give names, blocked their foot on my gate to protect closure of my gate, then threatened me with arrest of hinder. Played judge, jury and convictor in the driveway and plotted and stole my son's car under duress at approximately 6:30 a.m. Dial a tow, stole the car. So further to that, point 2 of this matter is all the officers of this incident are stood down with pay whilst investigation unfolds. Point 3, the chain of command is to be exposed as to who is issuing orders to officers that allow them to believe they can knock on the door of a sleeping household at 4 a.m. for an alleged burnout matter in masks with no ID on uniforms. When these public servants are repeatedly asked for ID, it is ignored, thus generating hysteria, and then steal a car in the middle of the night and impound it. The impounding company is complicit in this matter of receiving a car with no paperwork of valid due process attached to it. The tow company is also complicit and therefore liable. These are acts of terrorism and theft. The grand jury will await disclosure of names and the impound company, including the tow truck company, for further public listing of these crimes.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm, deny or abstain.
Yes.
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 Motion affirmed.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Okay, matter number 2, exposing themselves in fraud, accountable via education, advancing orders from the IAGJ, orders 8, 21, 23, 39, 40, 41, 42, Point 1, a new standard in education is now installed for the defunct positions of premiers and chief health officers and other associated government departments that do deem themselves responsible for thinking on behalf of community and deciding on behalf of community what safe looks like, in the face of believing and perpetuating the myth that there is a pandemic and that the privately owned VAX industry has the solution to that. For those who are educated, they know this is nothing more than a giant privately owned business model of macabre standards. Thus, all premiers who take their advice from CHOs, Chief Health Officers, and then develop rules that affect the lives of the Australian people will now sign off on series of education that will reveal this VAX industry for the fraud that it is, and thus their either willful ignorance of such research or their complicit conduct in this genocide agenda. Point 2, a public gazette will be installed in coming days for community to witness the conduct of these individuals in advancing their education. Upon being educated, all dialogues of a pandemic will drop away, or if education is not completed, the willful ignorance of that individual will be revealed, and thus they render themselves obsolete in a system that is already declared to be terminated. Point 3, additionally, all parties named in the Gazette are also liable and accountable for disclosing how many BioNTech shares they own, launched October 2019 at $13.82, now valued at $262.85 and having peaked at a 52-week high of $464 in August 2021. And any other shareholdings in VAX corporations is also required to be disclosed. Failure to be transparent will be deemed a matter of treason.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. Matter number 3. Accountability of alleged decision makers, advancing orders from IAGJ, orders 3940, 4950, 5455. Point 1, Dr. John Skerritt of the Therapeutic Goods Administration will write an open letter to the good people of Australia outlining the merits of why ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine were banned as remedy in this alleged pandemic, thus facilitating a dialogue that there was no remedy in the marketplace for COVID SARS-2, thus facilitating the perpetual use of the emergency declaration, thus facilitating the introduction of the privately owned experimental VAX. This letter will be received to We the People at executiveorders.life no later than 28/10/2021 and will be made available for public scrutiny via the Press Release Gazette. Point 6, Dr. Skerritt and associated employees of the TGA will also be subject to the education process of matter number 2, thus diffusing the fraud of the COVID pandemic dialogue and its associated measures implemented upon the freedoms of the Australian community.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
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 Okay, we're doing great, people. We're on page 18 of 21. Thank you. Thank you. We're all doing great.
Motion
Matter
is
number
carried in the
4.
affirmative.
Thank you. Matter number 4, termination of a broken system, advancing orders of IAGJ, orders 5, 6, 15, 16, 18, 31. 1, thanks to the recent speech by Tim Quilty in Parliament, these orders are further substantiated, and there's a 15-minute YouTube there that you can watch in your own time. Point 2, the good Australian people have no time nor interest in petty squabbling of a broken, outdated political system that fails to produce efficient results, but has instead allowed for a standard of living whereby we have Gestapo premiers sending spot checks to business, wielding threats of $100,000 fines if staff are found to not be double vaxxed. by a foreign-owned experimental cocktail, and this is called Health in Australia. No, thank you. Absolutely not. Australia will not succumb to this standard of tyranny. Australians will continue to enjoy our stunning landscape and our natural immune systems to deliver a lifestyle for ourselves and future generations that is in alignment with rule of law. All are equal before the law.
I now ask the jurors to raise their hand and affirm or deny.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Motion is carried in the affirmative.
Thank you. In conclusion, thank you for your time today. Thank you for the many contributors who have assisted to bring the second Australian Grand Jury to the table. To our fellow Australians, please be confident that we are getting our country back and we are systematically using the standards of rule of law, all are equal before the law, to weigh and measure all actions. If it does not meet this measure, it cannot be law, it is slavery. Please know and understand your inherent God-given rights to free will and informed consent. And if anyone violates that, please feel free to report them on Form A or the Australia Trials form of the executiveorders.life website. The meek shall inherit the earth, Matthew 5:5. In God we trust.
Amen.
Thank you.
Okay. Now time for us to close this meeting, and just one final vote. We would like now to send this document to be sealed by appropriate people, including the First Nations.
Yep.
All those in favour say aye.
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 Yes.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Aye.
Motion carried. We can stop the recording there, Karen, if you like.
No, wait 1 second.
Wait 1 second. Sorry.
If I may, can I just ask for some feedback? How did we find that as a process?
Very good.
Was it on camera?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank
Good.
you.
That was good.
Good.
Yes, it worked well.
Yeah.
No, that's a good process, I think.
Good.
Thanks, Leith.
The only feedback I'd give is as we're doing a confirmation of the affirmations of acceptance, that we do that at each singular, so that's called on roll call out, so we're not across each other. Therefore, it's clearly recognised on the taping.
Yes, I appreciate your feedback. That's why we also did ask that you raise your hand so that we have a visual credibility that you did, in fact, say yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So just one question I'd like to Leith, while you're sitting right there, is have we had an influx to the website? That would just be my one quick question.
It's been insane, absolutely insane. It just flows all day. With
That's
people
cool.
doing the join up button, people choosing Crown jurisdiction, people joining the first jury that we did, people signing on as ambassadors of rule of law. So we're growing that community where people can find someone that's a bit more au fait with the dialogue and the headspace. It's been overwhelmingly beautiful. It's just
Unreal.
amazing.
Right.
Yeah. So thank you to everyone.
Awesome.
All right, there you go, folks. What we need is a great big mountain pot. Big enough, big enough, big enough to take the world and what it's got. You know the song? That's what we're after, people, okay? Get on the website, okay? Hook in. Get yourself registered, all right? Do yourself a favour. Do us a favour. Do the people of Australia a favour. Do the people of the world a favour, okay? Let's unite, folks, okay? No time left. No time left, okay? We are putting it out there. We're telling you what we're doing, okay? You've just seen what we've done with the second grand jury, and there's one coming every week, folks. Okay, so get on the train. This is the good train. Get on the train. Let's get moving. Okay, thank you. God bless everyone. Have a great week. Bye.